Good morning, gang. Good morning, good morning. Just popping the link into Teams. So if you talk to me in the next few seconds, I will not be able to see you. It's a bit early today. I was in work yesterday, so I'm a little bit behind on all my work. Good morning, Lochran. I'm a little bit behind on my work, so I thought if I just adjust your lesson time, which I did on Monday night, to 9 instead of 10, I would be able to do a few more things before after the lesson, which is all right. Okay, so we are now into the fun part of the Cold War, as I would say. We are now completely in the territory where what? Anyway, here we go. Morning, Shan. Morning, Brandon. Braden. I've just had an email about Brandon. Sorry, Braden. We're now in the stage where the Cold War is coming to its hottest. Okay, we've had all this tension building. We've got the arms race in there. We've got the Berlin Wall going up. We've got obviously the Berlin crisis before that. We've got the space race going on. We've got the fact that they are one's communist, one's capitalist, and they're all going against each other. The tensions building, things are starting to hot up, and it all starts to spill over into a completely new crisis. So we need to start today with looking at where my suitcase that you're propped up on, I filled up last night because I went home, so it was a bit heavy to pull forward. This crisis starts in 1960, she says. 1959, yes, that's fine. 1959, with a revolution. Hello. Fletcher's just come in. And then goes all the way up into 1962. Now, my plan today is to go over the Bay of Pigs incident, which is the setup, and then next Wednesday go over and start the Cuban Missile Crisis in 2 different part lessons, because we don't have a lesson on Friday due to it being active day or sports day, as it were. All right. So unfortunately, yeah, I would say it's higher than -1 degree Celsius. It's more like 5 degrees Celsius, like the world nearly ends. So we don't have a lesson on Friday. I'm really sorry, out of my control. But you're meant to be getting active instead. So there you go. Are you gonna come and say hello before I start? Cuban Missile Crisis, exactly. Come here. I've got a friend. One sec. Oh, he's had his hair cut. Say hello, everyone. Right, can I start teaching now, please? I'm going to put you on the bed. There we go. He's laying on my bed now. So hopefully we should be able to teach. Right then. Completely different. Okay, let's get this done. So I'm going to put in the corner here a little bit of a key. Oh my God, second doggo has arrived. Good morning, Bonnie. Lord. Hello. Come here then. I haven't started yet, so come on. No, Bonnie's not making an appearance. Right, my little key. If I'm talking about this particular country or an action that they do, I will write it in their specific colour. All other information I'm going to put in purple, but it's just so you kind of have an idea of who I'm talking about, what the players are. What breed are your dogs? Westies. Bonnie. One sec, let me get Bonnie because she's doing something naughty. What are you doing? She makes that noise. There we go. Say hello. You can say hello. Sorry, she's not saying hello. Can you see yourself? She's like, do you want to just teach the lesson? Yeah. Stay on my bed. There you go. Demon dog, demon dog. She's made that noise since she was 7 weeks old. 7 weeks she's made that noise. You can't be coming up here and being noisy. It's not how it works. Right. Bay of Pigs. So let's set the scene for you. In the 1940s, the 1950s, Cuba had a good relationship with the USA. Now, it was nicknamed Cuba. Cuba was very poor historically, and it was a very cheap place for the rich to go and buy lots of property, have a really good time, yes, Loughran, correct. Yeah, they used to have a really good time there. The suns were much hotter, and I just realised I've got mascara on my face. The summers were much hotter, and it was seen as America's playground. America would, yeah, I suppose that's the right term. America would abuse Cuba slightly in that they would take over the best parts of, I say slightly, a lot. They would take over the best parts of Cuba. They would buy the best houses. They would exploit the exchange rate and the fact that Cuba were poor. They would exploit the fact that they could get more for their money there. And it was seen as America's playground because it could basically go into Cuba because it was in this sphere of influence and do what it wanted. And the man that was in charge of Cuba, I'm now going to put his name up here, was a guy called Batista. I can't actually think of his first name. Yeah, we're not going to write his first name. Now, Batista was a pro-American. He was he wasn't the best candidate, if I'm really honest. In Cuba, he was happy to support the USA. He was happy to be their little puppet. But actually, when it came to the Cubans themselves, they were not impressed with him because of how much he supported America, how much he would screw his own people over in order to please the Americans. Oh, sorry, to please the Americans. All right. So by the 1950s, then, Batista's unpopularity is growing and growing and growing. So much so that there is a revolution in the country. I'm making sure I'm covering. Oh yeah, I need to put that on. One last little fact before I say about revolution. Love how I forgot to include this, and it's like one of the most important parts of our story. Well done, Miss Martin. Really, really important then. Cuba is not far from America. When I say not far from America, I'm talking like 90 miles. So from the coast of Florida to Cuba, it's like me driving to Redruth and then driving back to Bodmin. So kind of going back and forth. So it's not particularly far. Yes, okay, there is a big body of water in between the coast of Florida and at Cuba, but in reality, they're not very far at all. Now, by the 1950s, I was saying, Batista was extremely unpopular. And as Lochran has so correctly identified in the comments, excuse me, Fidel Castro is friends with Che Guevara, but it's more led by Castro, and they go and learn. They go away together. They're friends. They go and help in different countries. And when they come back to Cuba, Castro says to his mate Che Guevara, "I'm not happy with Batista. I'm not happy with what's going on. As a communist, I'm not feeling this vibe anymore. Let's start a revolution. Why don't we?" And then Che Guevara's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So Castro's aim in 1959, I'm now going to put, I'll put Castro in green. Yeah, pretty much. They did travel together after Mexico, and they got involved in another revolution. But yeah, Batista failed the vibe check completely. So the idea of the Cuban Revolution, in Castro's eyes, is that he wanted more independence for Cuba from America. He wanted to take control of American property that was located, which he actually did. And his removal of the US capitalist companies even, and his desire to help the ordinary people was the USA's worst nightmare. Okay, and this was an absolute nightmare for the USA, because they're now losing control of the place that they like to take advantage of, the place that is a really good economic haven for them, the fact that they can put money over there in Cuba and not get taxed on it. So there's a lot of positives to Cuba, and now Castro's come in, taken over in a revolution. And he has given more power to the people, less power to America, taken away some of their properties and their companies. And he then drops in that he's a communist. Actually, he's a socialist, but he's a communist. So, oh my God. It's a little bit like America feels Stalin's pain at this point, because if you remember, West Berlin has always been the thorn in Stalin and the USSR's side, because it's a capitalist haven in a communist section. Well, now we've got a communist haven in a capitalist sphere of influence, and it makes America look really bad. Now, there we go. America was so mad at the revolution. Like, I can't tell you how mad they were. They lost their playground. They'd lost independence and freedom in Cuba. Castro was not particularly supportive of them. In fact, was the opposite. So America get petty. I'll be surprised. But America get petty. And as a result, they stop the import of Cuban sugar. Now, this is a major problem for Cuba. Cuba is a Caribbean country. It is a hot climate. its biggest export as a quite poor Caribbean country was sugar. It was a good hotbed for growing sugar, and lots of it, and good quality sugar. And its biggest buyer was the USA. Now, by banning the import of Cuban sugar, America immediately takes away the majority of Cuba's economy, and it's a massive threat that it could potentially bankrupt Cuba as a country. And this is all because A, they've had their playground removed, but also there is a little bit of a connection here. Is that they know, as a communist, Castro potentially has some connections to the communists in Soviet Russia. Excuse me. God, this is what going to doing a day's work again does to you, flipping heck. All right. And they refused to acknowledge the government. They're like, you're not Batista, you're not capitalist. No. So, as you can imagine, Castro's like, ooh, okay. If you don't want Cuba, I'll have Cuba. And the USSR then become friends with Cuba. It's funny because Fidel Castro had an obsession with ice cream and made a massive ice cream parlor in Cuba's capital. And he tried to get Canadian cows down in Cuba to make better dairy making cows. Didn't know that. Learn something new every day. That's felt awkward. Now, as you can imagine, having an ally only 90 miles from mainland America, I say mainland, I suppose, yeah, there are two island bits of America. Khrushchev is like this. Two tubs of ice cream after a full meal. God, I'd be sick. So Khrushchev is like rubbing his hands together. He loves having an ally very close to America's mainland, and he offers to buy the sugar. As you can see, things are going really well for America here. But he also says, right, okay, I'm happy to buy you sugar. I think that's great. I think that's a great idea. But a really even better idea is if I buy you sugar, would you mind if I put some weapons in Cuba? Now, Castro is, to be fair, a little bit not sure initially. He's a little bit not sure. And at the end of 59, weapons are sent to Cuba. They're not missiles at this point. They're just weapons. And it's all then made a lot more solid, and this relationship is strengthened by there we go. It is strengthened by the fact that a USSR diplomat goes and visits Cuba. So they go to Cuba, he visits, or they visit Castro, have a discussion, and Castro is then seen as like a beacon, a lighthouse for all communists or the exploited people of Latin America in with the support of the USSR. Now, in 1960, after these diplomats go to see Castro, Khrushchev openly promises to give them military assistance. And this pushes them close together. So it's a case of, all right, I've lost Berlin. Berlin is not united. I haven't got all of Berlin. I have put this wall up. I haven't really managed to push Kennedy where I want him yet. But Cuba could be a way to move forward. It could be good. So that's sort of your little background there. I am just making sure I've answered all your questions so far. Cool. Yeah, we're good. Right, I'm now going to move on to the actual Bay of Pigs incident, because you're probably thinking, Miss, you've not actually told us anything. Can't seem to see my answers. What is it? Please excuse me. Best I'm going to do with this board. I hate it, can you tell? Right then. Oh dear. America now are not happy. America have seen the relationship between the USSR and Cuba and thinking, oh my goodness. So as a result of the involvement with the USSR, America break all diplomatic relations with Cuba. Okay, so now America have said, fine, if we can't have all of you, we won't have any of you. They cut their nose off to spite their face. And they say that actually they are not going to have any diplomatic relations with Cuba in January 1961. So it's all gone very sour. Now, before the end of his presidency, Eisenhower authorized a scheme, okay, which is not going to end well. Let me just write this up. And it's based on using Cuban exiles. Now, Cuban exiles effectively are people that have left Cuba after the revolution because they are they don't like the way of life that Cuba has chosen with Castro, or they didn't like Castro, or Castro had a problem with them, and they live and move to America. Now, the idea was, or an idea that Eisenhower sets up, is that he's going to train these Cuban exiles to invade. This is already looking like it's going to work. Not. Now, when Kennedy comes to power, he's got the Vietnam War going on. He's got the Cold War going on. He's got the Civil Rights Movement going on. And you would think, Kennedy goes, do you know what? I don't think I should carry on with this particular scheme. We should probably just pick our battles. No. Kennedy says, no. And Kennedy takes it on. It's JFK approved. And decides that he's going to take this scheme on and that it's going to work. Now, these exiles were men who'd left Cuba in 1959, as I said, when Castro had taken over. And the aim of the invasion, I'm going to put this in here. The aim was to remove Castro from power and put Batista back in place. Batista was much nicer to the Americans. It would be much better for them, as in the Americans. Now, the fully equipped exiles would land in Cuba and create a national uprising. Okay, they were trained by the CIA. So it is literally top down involved in this, all right? And they were trained in Florida and Guatemala. And the whole operation had a budget of about 45 million, which is nuts. They were called, they gave themselves the name La Brigada. Okay. And by the time they completed their training, there was about 1,500 of them. Now, that seems like a lot of people. It's about, well, it's just over the amount of people in our school, about if you add in another year 7 group to what we've got already. That's a lot of people, but was it enough to defeat a whole country? I don't know. Now, when this is hilarious to me. On in 1961 invasion, then let's go for. I'm going to put this all in purple, not blue. So here we go. The hilarity of this. On the 15th of April, 61, the US bombed Cuba. So they bomb part of the Cuban Air Force. Well, that's actually specific. So that they take down some of the defences. Now, on the 16th of April, there was meant to be another wave of bombing. And that was meant to help and support the invasion that was about to happen and kill off the Cuban Air Force. By cancelling that bombing, the Cuban Air Force were able to regroup and prepare for an invasion. Okay. Now, on the 17th of April, La Brigada land at the Bay of Pigs. They weren't meant to land there because it was quite marshy. It wasn't ideal conditions, but the way they've chosen this is that the original place had been found out, which is hilarious because when La Brigada land at the Bay of Pigs, they are a little bit shocked to find that Castro is waiting for them. Now, I find this quite a funny notion. I find it hilarious. The La Brigada are doing all this in secret. Yes, okay, you've got that element of the intelligence agency, obviously, because the CIA are training them, but obviously Cuba's version. Castro didn't really need any intelligence for the La Brigada because they used the same radio frequency on their walkie-talkies as Cuba, the Cuban military. So Castro was informed right away, knew what was going on, and had 20,000 men, or 20,000 men of his soldiers, I should say, of his army ready and waiting. Unbelievably, the Cuban exiles do last 2 days, or 1,500 of them, against the army, and only 100 are killed. 1,100 arrested. Now you probably say Miss gets 300. 300 either escaped or defected. And it is a massive fail for the USA. It is a huge, huge fail. Right. I'm going to tell you why it's a failure. Well, if it's not obvious already. I don't know whether that's made it worse or better. I'm going to say worse. I can buff that up though. I miss my board. There we go. So, that was a lot quicker than last time. So why was it a failure for America? Let's have a look. Well, one reason is that people didn't rise up. The whole idea of the CIA's training of the exiles was that they thought the Cuban people didn't like Castro, and they thought that the people would rise up against him, join the exiles, and defeat him. That did not happen. Castro was very popular. In fact, he's so popular, I know he's dead now, that his family still continues to run Cuba. Raul, I believe, runs Cuba now. I could be wrong. Now, also, as I said, Castro knew about the invasion. He'd heard on the radio about the invasion and had time to prepare. Also, he had got intelligence in Miami, and they'd been heard discussing it in Miami. The US airstrikes were ineffective. Or cancelled. By cancelling that second airstrike, America removed their ability to win because the Cuban Air Force were able to support the army and have a stronger resistance against this invasion. That meant that a lot of La Brigade's supply ships were sunk by Cuban planes, and obviously the ground forces were completely superior in leadership, organisation, supplies, and La Brigada was no real match. Now, yes, okay, Castro was really popular in Cuba. He had been losing a little bit of support before the invasion because of the economic situation. It really wasn't his fault. And Cubans had left the country because of the lack of prosperity. However, when the invasion happens, Castro's presence and leadership is praised and supported more, and actually the USA are seen as a threat. JFK was completely humiliated by this. He was seen as a really bad guy, like a bad guy. He was seen by the world as inhumane. The fact that he just looked really bad. The USSR and Cuba got a lot closer together. They actually pushed them together, all right. Military advisors were now being sent to Cuba. They had combat stations put there, and it began to help spread communism to Latin America. And America have gone from having a massive sphere of influence in Europe and Latin America to going to being a potential lone voice, a lone capitalist voice in North and South America. I think that is it. Let me just double check your questions. I have a fly in my room. Excellent. There we go. Yeah, that's all my questions. So, Oh, it's telling me I'm live. Great. So you can see the Bay of Pigs sets the Cuban Missile Crisis up nicely for the simple fact that you have America meddling in a country where they're not wanted. You've got them then being pushed, the Cuba being pushed towards the Soviet Union, America throwing their toys out of the pram because they haven't got what they want and deciding that they're going to try and invade to make up for it. And it really backfires on them. It really backfires on them. And now, JFK is seen as an evil jam donut, and tensions are now beginning at an all-time high. So Khrushchev is rubbing his hands together. He's got this sphere of influence now in Latin America near his enemy of the USA. And he's got the ability now to put missiles onto Cuba to strike America, because Russia is quite a long way from America, and they wouldn't be able to get a good striking range from Moscow. Whereas America have got missiles based in Turkey and could hit the USSR fine. The USSR don't have that ability, but now they've got Cuba under their wing. Things could be happening. There we go. That is the Bay of Pigs. I've set you, I think it's something like 20 something, 24 questions, just to make you aware. If they have a star on, like those, it is to do with your consequences. And the reason I've highlighted those is because they're going to be our causes of the Cuban Missile Crisis / you're going to need them for a consequence question. All right, my loves, have a good day. Have a good week. I will be around. Like I said, I'm just doing an exercise class, but apart from that, I am around all day. And yeah, have a good day. Miss you loads. See you next Wednesday. Bye.